So hopefully you see something now. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so again, welcome to this webinar. Let's start with the agenda. You've seen this, of course, but let me quickly go over it. First, we will start with an overview of licensing. Of course, explain what will change, and then we will go into what you as a company can do to prepare for this change. And next to explaining that, we will share some best practices and also show you a little bit how you can prepare yourself with some best practices, and of course the next steps you can take. We will end with the Q&A, and by using the chat part of this presentation, you can ask your questions, and we will try to answer them as good as possible, of course. Most of them we will do that. We will answer it at the end of the session, but well, we will try to view it carefully, and so maybe we can also do it through the presentation. If we haven't come to your question or you have additional questions after the session, please reach out to us, because we are more than happy to assist you in any questions that you might have. Okay, so first let me introduce a little bit about our organization, so you know who's presenting, of course. And well, Next365 is an expert company, and we are focused on helping you accelerate your business transformation, and we do so by securing you get the most value out of Dynamics and the Power Platform. And this is actually our only focus. We do this by being part of the client's internal team, and we fuse them with the Dynamics knowledge that we have. So it sticks, and you will have that knowledge also even after we are gone. Since the client expertise, of course, is the business processes, we know Dynamics, so we can make sure your goals are achieved and the relevant Dynamics knowledge is embedded in your team. Well, we have locations. We operate from locations across the world, as you can see. So we help international customers, but also by our local teams, we can help the local companies. We do that with a lot of technical expertise. We have architects, we have senior specialists, and so we can give guidance to your project and be part of your implementation team. In this case, we help both the client but also the traditional partners by having this knowledge and hand it over to you. We did this for a number of customers, as you can see, and these are just some names that we have helped in the past. But let's go to the actual content, and by doing that, I'm happy that I can introduce two of my colleagues. The first one is Per, and Per has a lot of experience, started over 20 years ago. He started with Axapta actually, and all the versions of Dynamics after that. And prior to joining Next, he was also a product manager for a large ISV, which had a very good solution, or still has a very good solution on Dynamics. And after Per, André will help you explaining more the part of the best cases that we have, and will demo. And he has a lot of knowledge as well, working for clients, working for partners, and he's also an MVP for more than 12 years. So you might have seen him on stage because he's a speaker on several Microsoft events. So with that, I would like to start with the licensing content and hand over to Per for the next part. Per, can you take over?
Yes, thank you, Wilbert. So we're going to start with diving into the background of licensing. So if you can do the next slide, Wilbert. So to begin with, it's very important to understand that from a licensing perspective, nothing has really changed. The licenses rules that are in effect have been in effect now for 6 or 7 years. So there is no change to the actual rules. There's been some clarifications on multiplexing, but the underlying license rules are the same. So what are these underlying license rules? So we have basically three types of licenses. We have user licenses, which are assigned to a specific user. We have device licenses, which are assigned to a specific device, which can be used by multiple users. And we have tenant licenses, which are assigned to a tenant that's then in effect for the entire tenant, so to say. So if we're looking at starting at the user licenses, we have the two full user type licenses, base and attach. Base can either be, for example, finance, supply chain, HR, commerce, but it can also be finance premium and supply chain premium. So finance and supply chain exist in a normal and a premium version, which gives a little bit extra. So finance gives business process planning, and supply chain premium gives the MRP app, demand planning. A user has to have a base license. That gives access to one module, for example, finance. Now, if that user also needs to access supply chain, they can then buy a cheaper license called attach. So you can have one user with a base license and many attached licenses. It is important when you're looking at licensing to look at which base licenses you should use, but we're coming to that in a little bit later. We then have the lower levels of user licenses. We have operations activity, which contains, which allows you to do certain things in a role. For example, warehouse worker. It's an activity license, so it's slightly cheaper and it's slightly limited. Then we have team member. It's basically read-only to the entire Dynamics 365. It allows you to do certain things like approve expense reports, approve invoices, and similar things. And the lowest level is HR self-service. It's a subset of team member only for the HR module. So next slide. Device licenses, we have two types of device licenses. We have full access device license, which basically gives you full access to the application of choice, usually supply chain. Or we have an operations device license, like the operations activity. It's limited to a certain area, for example, warehouse workers. For tenant licenses, we have two types of licenses. We have full access. Basically, you turn it on and you get the feature. Example of this is electronic invoicing and customer insights. We also have capacity licensing, and which gives you some sort of extra capacity. It can be Dataverse capacity, file capacity, log capacity, database capacity. But we also have the order lines capacity. So order lines is for certain tables, amongst other, it's manufacturing orders, sales orders and purchase orders, but there are other tables as well, which allows you to ingest data through, for example, an integration. In some scenarios, this is better and cheaper than using the multiplexing route. And multiplexing, it's the tricky one. This is the one where many clients are under licensed. What it basically means is if you're a user in another system and you access F&O directly or indirectly, you need to be correctly licensed in F&O. So let's say that you're working in SAP where you do inventory transactions, and those are then integrated into a Dynamics instance. You actually need to be licensed in Dynamics for that. It's the same thing if you're using, for example, ClickView or any other sort of BI tool. You're going to need to be a team member in Dynamics to be allowed to read the data from Dynamics. So multiplexing is really important to consider from an overall license perspective. And in some scenarios where you have very large integration systems, that's where you instead can use then the order lines to try to lower the license price. But it's an individual effort to look into what's best for each client and each situation. But multiplexing is tricky. There is a good bit on it in the license guide. In general, I recommend reading the license guide. It's a good read. It's fairly long, but it will give good insight into how the rules actually are. So we can do next slide. So this is a almost complete picture of the licenses, and we can then see the different types. So we see, for example, that we have in the top left, we have the full user base SKUs. So we have, for example, sales premium, Microsoft relationship sales, and also continuing to the ERP side, we have finance premium, supply chain premium, and on the line below, we have finance and supply chain. We also see the minimum number of seats you need to buy of a base license. So this is something that's important when you're doing your analysis, to find out that you meet your minimum levels of each license, because it's checked by license type, you cannot combine, and when you split your base and attached licenses. So we can do the next slide. We can go directly to the next one. So what's happening? So as I said, the rules are the same. It's been the same for about 6-7 years. But what's happening is, on your first renewal, after January 15th, enforcement will start. But this means, for example, that if your renewal date is on January 14th, enforcement will not start until January 14th, 2027. So it's the first renewal after January 15th, 2026. The way it will work is that you will get notifications 30 days prior to renewal or anniversary date. So any users who are incorrectly licensed will get a little yellow message. And the actual validation will start 15 days after renewal or anniversary date. So you have 45 days to fix your licenses. Of course, it's better to fix them early, so you don't run into this once the enforcement hits. One important aspect here is that validation is on the tenant level, so not the client level. So if you're running multiple tenants, each tenant needs to be completely correctly licensed within itself. You cannot have licenses going across tenants. It's tenant specific. Validation is currently only for production environments. Currently, there is no plans, as far as we know, to extend this to other environments, but just it's currently only production environments. And of course, unlicensed users will not be able to log in after the 15 days after your renewal or anniversary date. So we can do next slide. And we can go directly, yeah. So there is always a risk of being under-licensed, but there's also a risk of being over-licensed. And of course, there's a risk of being correctly licensed, but paying too much. So there's a little bit of work here in making sure that you're paying exactly what you need. Not too much and not too little, because then the users can't log in. So we need to start by finding the correct license needs by users. There's several ways to do this. For example, you can start by looking at your segregation of duty matrices or your job descriptions, finding out what your users should access. You can use telemetry to see what the user is accessing and how often. You can then also look at which base and attached licenses do you have, what are the minimum levels, trying to make sure that it fits, so that you don't pay for a full license when there's enough to have an attached license. In some cases, it could be worth getting a base license instead of an attached license, or raising the base license level, for example, to finance premium, because the base licenses give capacity. Attached licenses does not. So if you're over on capacity, it could be really good to simulate what the capacity impact will be by looking at the base licenses. From a capacity standpoint, of course, you need to review your environmental setup. Are all environments being used? Does all environments need all the data that they have? So for example, of course, UAT probably needs to have production data, but the development machine, does that need to have any transaction at all, or just a few? So you can scope down on the capacity that's needed. There is no hard fact on when a user license or a device license is best. It's something that needs to be investigated based on your usage. It's very common that device licenses are the better option in warehouse and production scenarios and retail scenarios, but it's something that needs to be looked at individually to make sure that you're using the correct type of licenses. But in general, device licenses is a way to lower your license cost. But it's not the truth for all cases. In the next slide. So these best practices are some best practices and are depending on your scenarios. So there are scenarios where this is not the best way to go, but if we're looking at the general view, this works in like the 80% cases as a good starting point, but you need to look at your specific scenarios if you need to do something else or something more. But a very good starting point is checking security role assignment against job description. So for example, we've seen a lot of times that perhaps a inventory manager has been assigned finance user rights to be able to look at something in finance, then forcing a finance attached license, when perhaps it would have been enough to give them a custom role or duty which would have just read-only access and therefore not requiring any extra licenses. So good starting point. Are your users having the access that they're supposed to have based on what they're doing? We can also, of course, check the roles they have against what they're doing. So application insights, telemetry is a good tool here. We have to keep in mind that application insights currently only measure the form you go to, not the buttons you click. And since the new role enforcement is based on menu items, the buttons you click, it's not a 100% tool, but it gives a very good view on what's needed. What I like, but once again, it's not for everyone, is to make sure that all roles only require one license. So if you have a big monolithic role for factory controllers, which would give them both product operations, supply chain, and finance licenses, I would split that into 3 sub-roles, keeping it lean. And then you can perhaps also lower which of your factory controllers need all 3 areas. So it's a way of optimizing the spend. But this has a maintenance impact, both on the roles and the roles assignments. So depending on your business, it might not be best, but it's a very good starting point to start with. Also, consider infrequent usage. Does a user who once a month press a button need to do that? Or can he send an email to someone to do that? Is read-only access enough? And there are bugs in the standard privileges from Microsoft where a read-only privilege actually has write access. So until these are fixed, you probably also need to make sure that you make a copy of the privileges and remove the write access. But there is a lot of things you can do there. There is a list on the Microsoft sites for which service accounts, for which purposes do not require a license. If possible, use these service accounts, otherwise they're going to require licenses. Yes, next slide. And I hand over to André.
Thank you, Per. I will share my screen now. Let me know if it pops up. I think so now.
Yes.
Yes, I will do a live demo of the tools available by Microsoft and how you can interpret it and what you can do more. Starting with the Power Platform Admin Center. A while ago, Microsoft added reports to make it visible which users are using Dynamics 365 and what licenses are required. There were certain errors in it, and also the view has been enhanced quite a lot. And currently, this is the normal view when opening the Power Platform Admin Center. But if you go to the preview mode, there is already an additional option to also see under licensed users, also over licensed users, and since yesterday I'm able to see also users that are in the application but does not need any license, and typically this will be an admin or an integration account. When you look at the data here, the 24, 22, 10, all these numbers don't match with the total users requiring. That is because some users might need more than one license, and in that case this report is not able to suggest you which one should be an attach and which one should be the base license. If it's the same money value, you can choose to have either a supply chain as base or the finance as base and the other one as an attached. Now, when looking into some of the details, you can see which users are in the environment and are already assigned to a license, or what license is missing and what should be done. So this from a finance point of view, but if you want to see also which users are over licensed, in this case, one in my environment, he requires supply chain management, but also has human resources. In this case, we can just take away the license assigned human resources to save some value. You can also drill down into particular details of a specific user. For example, if you now click on the finance part here, you can see that this is the license part. You can see in what environment, what security roles are assigned to this specific user. You can also continue in just checking what is the contents of this system user role or the accountant role. But also that information is being synchronized to Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, where you can do more and better analysis out of that. Just to be aware, all the data that is currently being calculated for your licenses is a microservice outside of Dynamics 365. It will just calculate the data, present it in the report. Currently, just initially, it was refreshed every 72 hours, now 24, and even sometimes it might run more frequent than only the 24 hours in Power Platform Admin Center. Similar information is available also in Lifecycle Services, but with more limited information. And if you want to just drill down and take actions, you can go to Finance and Operations to see more details. Now, before we do that, we usually go to just extract some data and create certain reports. So in this case, the current environment I'm working in has a requirement of typical licenses. And if you look at, for example, Alfonso is currently requiring a finance and a supply chain management license. And using the tools we created, we try to suggest for finance, and then in that case you don't need a second base license, but you can use the attach. But in case you would like to have the supply chain management as base and not the finance, also the sheet is intelligent enough. If you take away the finance, then it will require a supply chain management, and then you can have the finance attached. And here you can see that the totals will tell you for which type of license you will need then what number of licenses in your tenants. And one thing that stands out here is that I expected a lot of team members, and apparently in the current environment it's 0. So that needs investigation to see what is going on. Another view could be just a user security metrics, where you can see which roles are just heavily used, but also in case there are users with a lot of security roles, might be a risk also for the license. If you look at a view on active security roles, so not the roles that are not used, then you can also focus on the number of users and check the number of licenses. And as Per mentioned, well, preferably if you can go to just one license at a maximum, then you can see at some of the roles, like the project manager now requires finance and project operations instead of only project operations, an area to investigate, 5 users in total. But in this case, also 66 users are having the option to create purchase requisitions. This is now an operations activity instead of a team member, what we found out. And over here you can save a lot of money because there's a difference in about 40 euros. A user, 40 times 66 is a lot of money. So that would be an area to investigate. Now, the tools available in finance and operations. There's a new feature that needs to be enabled in your environment, which is the user security governance. And also when enabling that one, there's another related feature for licenses usage summary. Also that one needs to be enabled to view data. And the data being listed here, it's coming from that microservice outside of finance operations, which calculates the data and pushes it here. Now you have a view on user licenses, for example, which is a summary of which user, in this case Alfonso, needs finance and supply chain management. The calculation is based on entitled secureable objects or not. So you can see that out of the just the secureable objects available to this user via one or more security roles, there are some which are not entitled, and by just going to a next license, it should be in fact to 0, but in this case it's not ending up. But at least Alfonso needs 2 licenses. If you look at user role licenses, it will be just a bit of drill down, where you can see that Alfonso has multiple security roles, and for the purchasing agent it requires also more than 1 license. So it would be interesting to know what is going on with this purchasing agent role, but also I would like to just dive into the purchase requisitions to check out what is going on. Now you also have a view on role licenses. This is just telling not that you would need a commerce license for all of these roles. This is more telling you if you have a focus on, for example, the purchase requisitions. With a commerce license, you are able to use this role as the not entitled is 0. But to have a better overview, you can filter on the role name. You can see for each of the license SKU what is entitled or what is not entitled. Meaning that currently the purchase requisitions according to the Dynamics 365 licensing guide should be a team member license. In this case there are 2 not entitled objects, making this one a higher license requirement. For example, operations activity is possible now. To reduce it, we need to know what are these 2. So if we then focus on the purchase requisitions, we can sort or filter on the not entitled column. And what we see here is that there are just 2 service operations with write access which are not entitled. If we are able to find out where in this role is it used and is it really required or not, if we can take it out, in that case the purchase requisitions will go back to a team member license. The same is valid if we look at the other purchase role. Let's first clear it. Purchasing agent. What you can see is, in this case, this purchasing agent requires 2 base licenses, and that's because the supply chain management is almost covered until 6, and then adding probably finance or commerce might then fulfill the requirement for this security role. But in this case, we would like to know what is going on with these 6 not entitled objects. Also here we can sort or filter. We can see there are 6 elements with wide access that does not meet the supply chain management license. What we can do is just filter, select the lines. Then you see an arrow coming. Then we can copy these AOT names. In the security configuration tool, purchasing agent view permissions, we can see all what is going on, all elements granted as part of this role. And here we can click on filtering is one-off, paste the menu items, click on apply, and what we can see now is there are just 2 privileges and 1 duty causing access to a finance license. And in this case, if we take out only this duty, publish the role, then this role will go back to a supply chain management license. So that's what we can do. In the duties, find the maintain complementary invoices. If you look at the details, this is just also an example I had seen at a client. They thought like this is purchase related. However, it's a duty related to Brazilian localized functionality. So this one should be deleted here. It's not required for the purchasing agent role. And then click on publish changes. Now there are also other options, like if you go to a read-only role to check what is going on with the view permissions. It should be read-only, and if you look at read, then it's grant, and also here you see that everywhere the update, create, delete, correct is all 0. But for some of the items, not correct, update, create, delete, for correct or invoke, this is legacy license information which is still in the system but not used anymore. There are certain elements with grant which are not required anymore. To fix that, initially you had to remove the objects from the privilege, re-edit again. But a recent change at Microsoft, it's now also possible to maintain the correct and invoke permissions on the security configuration form. So if this would be set to unset, and also for the custom agents, in that way, publish the changes, wait for a refresh from Microsoft, and then it will be back to really read only, making this also not a higher license requirement, but only a team member's license. Now, we'll continue to the slide deck. If you look at what Microsoft is working on, you can monitor for some known issues where they're working on. Just recently changed is users from external domains are now also included, and also users created via André ID groups are currently listed in the report I used or just saw yesterday. So still in the slide is active, but probably it is resolved or will be just set to resolved soon. And also Microsoft is working on some elements which are just now required, which should be a team member according to the licensing guide for approval on timesheets, purchase requisitions, and purchase invoices. Microsoft is working on that to fix that. And also, and expected in the future, be aware of that, is the device licenses. Microsoft would like to also include that as part of the license enforcement, and be aware that the storage capacity will be enforced in future as well. We don't know the exact timeline for that. At least for the Dataverse capacity, it is already enforced, but for Evernote, we expect that it will come next year. Some work we have done at for clients around the world. So these are just only 2 examples where just one global manufacturer had a lot of security rules, a lot of users. We found that they had a lot of incorrect settings and also database overusage, and they are after an assessment, we know that they are a bit under licensed as how that should be configured, but if they don't do anything in their environment, they will probably need to buy about 2 million yearly subscriptions. So there we will just help them soon also being compliant with the expected security rules. And it can also be the case that some of the clients already have a partner doing a lot of work, but when they look at different reports and what the partner is saying, or maybe what their licensing partner is saying, then there might be some differences. And just another client asked us, can you do a second opinion, because we would like to know what's going on. At that time, I was aware of what was correct or not, as I also participate in weekly office hours with Microsoft on the licensing part, and that we were able to clean up or ignore certain parts. And after conducting a deep dive with them together, where they already prepared a lot themselves, we made small changes in security rules, and after I left in about 1.5 to 2 days work, then they already have a direct return on investment saving licenses.
Yes, so what should you do? This slide is basically stolen 100% from the Microsoft page on the license enforcement. We have a link later in the presentation. But what you need to do is you need to understand the licensing requirements. You have to understand the model on how security roles, duties, and privileges map to license types. Just keep in mind that before each object, so to say, was tagged with a license requirement in the AOT, it's no longer that. It's based on the menu items and how Microsoft checks them. So there is all the old license reports are out. You have to use the new ones. Review user role and license mapping. Power Platform, Admin Center, Dynamics, Lifecycle Services, or the security reports that André showed you. It's where you should go to find out what you need. You need to optimize the role to license connection. And of course, assign licenses. So it's a fairly easy process, right? You have to understand, you have to analyze, and you have to execute. The tricky part is perhaps understanding from time to time. Even though I like the license guide and I read every version of it, some people find it a little bit heavy to go through. But it's a good read. Can go to the next slide, André.
I think that is the Q&A part.
Yeah. So in the Q&A, I've seen some questions come in, and I've answered 2 of them. So if we're going from the ones that I've answered, we had a question from Omar. What about using sysadmin for service account? That is an option if you're just looking at it from a pure license perspective, because system admins are not counted currently for license enforcement. We don't know what will happen in the future, but currently they're not counted. Of course, using system admin for a service account is a security risk and not something I would recommend, but it's an option. And we have a question on let's see, how can I know exactly the impact of a specific AOT name in the business? So what André showed you is what you can find out from the system. You can find out based on the AOT name in the license role assignment. You can find out when you go to the role, you can search for the AOT name and find out the duties and privileges that impacts. You still need to know which part of F&O it is. There is no shortcut there. So that's it. So we have done a couple I haven't answered. So if we look at them, we have one from Omar as well. I see no over license, under license without requirement in my top level metrics. Is there some action I need to do in PPAC in order to upgrade? I don't know, André, if you can answer that one, or if it's just a
yes,
meeting.
I can take that one. When I go back to my browser, so what you can do is go to the Power Platform Admin Center, where if you navigate to the licensing, you see the standard report available today. There is a preview version. If you change the URL and between admin and Power Platform add the word preview dot, in that case you get a new view, which will be available as just GA soon. So this is currently a preview version with the additional tiles. You can check out if it's also available already in your tenant as preview, but I do expect it will be released soon and made available for everyone in the world.
And then we have also a question for you, André. Is the security analysis Excel report based on existing OData entities?
That's a good question. Initially, we had one based on OData entities. However, with the new licensing tables, with the user licenses, the user role licenses, there are no data entities available for that one. So what we do today is export some data and also manually add the contents of those two tab pages in the Excel sheet, and then just make certain queries out of it and present the data in a specific way.
Yep. Another question, when I find some AOT not entitled, how can I know quickly the licenses that cover that specific AOT? So I don't know, André, if you have a better answer, but what I did is that when I found that, I just quickly searched in the finance, supply chain, and commerce to see if it was there and entitled. I don't know if it's a better version of doing it, but that went fairly quickly for me.
Yes, what I used to do is when I go to the security analysis page, you can just find the menu item as one of the resources, and this one is not updated in this environment. But the security analysis is also part of user security governance. Then you can filter on context resource, find your menu item, and then you can see which privileges, duties, or roles it is being used. And then from the privilege, you can also go to privilege licenses and take one, for example, this one. Filter just like I did on the security rules, and also here you can see the entitled and not entitled. If it's 0, then it is a finance, but that's on the privilege level. In this case, if you want to find out which one is then not entitled for the finance, also here again you can filter or search. In this case, it is a cast aging snapshot which had the write access instead of the read access. I didn't publish the changes yet, but these are also some options to find out where a particular element is used and then check the license level for the privilege or duty.
The next question is, did you check two known issues, but it's basically regarding team member duties that are shown as full license in D365. These are flagged as resolved, but not effective in the ERP Omar is running. I think it's just a matter of you need to upgrade. I don't know if you have to where the fix is, but there are a lot of things wrong currently. There are stuff that should be team member that's not. So I think it's a matter of waiting out. I think when I talked to them in Summit in December, I think most of the things should be fixed. If I remember correctly, André, you were in the same meeting.
Yes, at least they said mid-November there will be a lot of just updates available, and Microsoft is indeed just not only updating the underlying data to tell the system what is entitled or not for what type of license queue, but there are also some changes in the application itself on privilege level and the security rules. So you would also need to install the latest available quality update for your environment, 10.044 or 10.045, or just check 10.046 to preview already. There will be some the quality updates which will also fix parts of your access levels, and that will also fix the fact that if it's something recognized as right, that will be then read, and that's also part of the total solution to make certain approvals, for example, the timesheets and the purchase order invoices back to a team member.
Then we have...
It's a matter of probably a few weeks.
Yeah. Then we have a question. What tips do you have for determining the license requirements for AX 2012 and D365 CE, CS, CI, FO security rules if you use these apps together in your company? So 12 has its own old security model. So if users are only working in 12, you have to look at that. If you're integrating 12 and F&O, you actually need to look at what they would require for F&O licenses in F&O and assign them that license in F&O due to the multiplexing rule. So it's in the scenario where you're integrating different Dynamics products with each other, you have to look at the multiplexing scenario. And keep in mind, this is also very important for Power Apps. If you have a Power Apps that updates something in F&O, the users using that Power App need to be completely correctly licensed in F&O. So as soon as you're integrating anything with F&O, the licenses in the users in those systems has to be licensed according to the F&O level. So that's the sad truth of it.
Also, part of the question is about CE. In case a user in finance operations has, for example, supply chain management, and that user also is using CE with sales enterprise, in that case, the sales enterprise is also allowed to be attached for that user. But there's no direct overview. Maybe we can also just enhance our Excel sheet, or you can create some reporting out of it. But it might be worth to also check, do you have users using both of the applications? And according to the licensing guide, check if those users can just benefit from using a attach instead of a base sales license.
Guys, we are running out of time, so let's try to finalize with 2 additional questions and then wrap up.
Yeah, so I think the one here, the PPAC is showing different number every week. I think we've already answered that basically, that mid-November, the numbers should settle down. So just wait. And then we have, if a user is required to have an attached license to HR, but only have a base license on finance, will the user then be excluded from the system? André, my view is that they will be able to access finance, but not HR.
Well, in fact, Microsoft listed in the frequently asked questions document they created that a user needs to be licensed properly. So both licenses should be attached, otherwise they might lose access. It might be the case that the check is not that sophisticated in the beginning, but actually just the 30-day before the renewal or anniversary, in case the user will get a warning like you will lose access, then please take action, as then they really need both of the licenses assigned.
And then the final question, how license usage summary behave with customized dev? So the way it behaves is that for anything that's not Microsoft tables, it's basically going to currently show up as requirement none. But if you do an extension or touch something which is Microsoft, that menu item is part of the requirement. So for example, I've been looking into the Xflow security roles, and they touch ledger journal trans. In certain areas and other ledger journal functions, and therefore they require a finance license. But everything that's just Xflow tables, that's excluded from the license report and it's marked as non-required. So before, when you develop, you could set on your menu items which license level it required. You can set enterprise team member activity, if I remember correctly. Now it doesn't care, it looks as the menu item. But what you have to keep in mind, if your custom development does something in standard, even though it's marked as none, your licenses your users needs to be correctly licensed. So it's a matter of whoever is doing the development to do an analysis against the licensing guide against what license different operations require.
Yeah,
sounds good.
In addition, if you assign a user to rules which is stating none only, then still a user needs to be a team member assigned, because you can't access the application without any license assigned.
Okay, let's move to the last slide then, André.
Yes. In the slide deck, we have some resources compiled, which you can read to stay up to date and get notified and just have additional information. Also, certain things I just demoed today, but there's a lot of information available on this topic.
That concludes the webinar. So I want to thank everyone for your participation and your time, of course. And again, if you have any questions or remarks, just please reach out to us. We are very happy to help. So thank you all, and have a very good Thursday.